recommend the Anchor wallet.
So this is what a ledger looks like, just because I have a closer camera than they do. This is a hardware wallet. When you click the button, oh wait, now I'm upside down. It asks you for a PIN. So like I can't access any of my NFTs without typing in a PIN code here. And how many times if you type it in wrong, it like deletes your stuff, right?
You get
For
three,
the ledger, you get 3 tries. Yeah, on the 3rd try, it wipes the device as a safety feature.
So yeah,
So that you need to basically restore the entire seed at that point to access your funds. So remember your PIN. But yeah, let me get into it a little bit further back though, because I feel like you got to have a little foundation on what is happening to understand why you even want to use something like that. So most people use, I think, the .wham wallets that you're using through the web wallet that you get by signing up on the web cloud wallet. And what that is a custodial wallet, meaning that the private key side of that wallet's key pair is owned by the Wax development team who's behind the Wax cloud wallet. So what that means in the first place is any wallet address in general is basically just a pair of keys, a private key and a public key. The public key of your Wax wallet is your wallet address. So whatever .wham, that is basically like a human legible version of the hash that is your public key. So you would always, it's okay to share the public key with anybody. Because obviously that's how people would send you your funds, and that's how you interact with the blockchain, and that's kind of like your wallet's identity on the blockchain is its public key, and you can think of the public key usually as the wallet address. Now a public key has the side of that pair is the private key, and that is what only the owner of the wallet has access to, and that is the side of this equation that is queried when the wallet's public key makes a transaction. So when you make a transaction, what that means is the public key signals to the network, you want to, send this NFT, you want to, let me know if I'm getting way too fucking above, like, I just want to set like a quick baseline of what's happening. Yeah, but I'm getting like blank stares in here, so hopefully people can follow.
I'll ask layman's questions.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
You're a little stoned,
too. But anyway, so the public side of this wallet is signaling the network, I'm going to send this amount of tokens or this amount of this NFT asset, this whatever. And the network will then look at that transaction and validate it if the it will validate it if the transaction signal was signed by the private side of that key pair. So the only way for a transaction to be valid on the blockchain is if it was initiated by the person who owned the public address, because anybody knows what the public address is. I could even signal like a transaction from somebody else's wallet, but I wouldn't be able to sign that transaction, so it would just go away. It would never be added to any blocks, basically. So that's kind of like the basic structure of what's happening behind the scenes with your wallet. You have your public address where you're which you share with people, which you use to sign into to alien worlds, to our planet, to the atomic hub. This is specifically, I'm sticking to Wax right now, but it's the same across all these blockchains too. And then you have that public address has a private key, which you're using to sign the transaction. So when you're using your cloud wallet, that private key is owned by the web developers behind the cloud wallet. And when you ask to sign a transaction, and it brings up that little pop-up window, you approve it, the approval comes from their server, querying that public key's private key. So what that also means is because they own the private key and you don't, there is a non-zero chance that they can lock you out of access to your assets. The assets that you hold on the web cloud wallet are, strictly speaking, not in your custody because you don't own the private key to that public key.
So inherently you're trusting. There is one layer of trust here, in that you're trusting Wax to handle your private keys in your best interest, which there's no reason at this point to assume that they do not. But if you want to be 100% sure, not your keys, not your coins, that is where that extra layer of safety with hardware wallets. And you see people do a lot of mixture of I'll use my web wallet for active gaming and stuff, but when I have legitimate stuff, I'll put it on a hardware one or a colder wallet, or at least something that's a little bit more protected where you can control the seed phrase and control private keys. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right. So I'm gonna break down a couple of things that you just mentioned there. So first of all, when you're on the web cloud wallet, like we said, that's a custodial relationship. Like Mark was saying, you're trusting the web developers behind the wallet to play nicely. And he said you're trusting Wax, which the wallet is maintained by the Wax core development team. So yeah, you are. Like, it's pretty trustworthy, I would say. I mean, I have a web wallet, and it's not an unsafe thing to use.
It's similar to like trusting your bank, I guess, at that point.
But in that sense, yeah, for sure. And then the thing you should do, though, if you do use your web wallet, is you should secure it with two-factor authentication if you don't already do that. So let me actually just stop for just a second and show you how to do that.
Someone did that. So you put everything on Anchor, then put it in the ledger?
So let me...
But you can't put your WCW on the ledger, is another thing.
Wax Cloud wallet.
That's correct, because you don't own the private key. And what the Anchor wallet is a wallet interface that lets you interface with public and private key pairs. Now, where those pairs... let me start with this first, because it gets...
Yeah, so the abridged version, and then Max go into more detail, is that like with the Ledger hardware wallet, the private keys are always offline, cold, do not touch the internet, and the public key is communicating from the Ledger to Anchor, which then connects with APIs through like Atomic Hub or what have you. And so there's like a chain of connections there, but the private key is always cold on the Ledger. You can make hot wallets, as in the public and private key pair have touched the internet in some way, been typed on a computer that is connected to the internet at any given time if you want to take that extra layer of safety. And then so that would be the difference between like an Anchor hot wallet into a hardware cold wallet and a Wax hot wallet. But anyway, those are all like, that's a lot of jargon heavy stuff, and we can go deeper into that or go higher level, but
I'll try to unpack it kind of. Yeah, that's why I was trying to go like, I'm trying to go very sequentially with like, start with this is the basic of what's happening, and then like here's how you can interface with it all. But essentially, like a hot wallet, a cold wallet, a custodial wallet, all of that stuff is doing the exact same thing, which is it's a private and a public key pair. And when the public key signals a transaction, the private key is queried to sign that transaction. How that query is conducted is where the differences lie. So is the private key held by somebody else, as is the case with this web wallet? Then it's a custodial wallet. Is that private key on your computer that you're doing the transaction on, that computer being connected to the internet and having the vulnerability vectors that come with the computer that is connected to the internet? That's called a hot wallet. And then, or is that query going to a private key pair that exists on a hardware device, which is by design separate from the internet and essentially a cold environment? That is a cold wallet. But all of them are doing the same thing in the sense that all they are doing is signing what the public key is signaling. And the safety that you need to maintain as the person who is their own bank and the only custodian of their assets is the safety of that private key side of this pair.
And I guess it's a user to user choice. How much of that trust do you want to give, if at all, and how much control do you want? And there are technical barriers along the way in each of those layers on kind of like the cost benefit of those things. But, you know, if you're into cryptocurrency as a medium of transactions, you know, you're probably inherently in some way want to take some control back from a custodial relationship, which is similar to a bank, right?
We have a question. Sorry to interrupt really quick. We have a question from Seeker. He says, so you have to have your ledger plugged in to utilize the wallet that you have it stored in it.
Sort of. You have to have the ledger plugged in every time the private key is queried for a transaction. You can still open the wallet. Like right now, I can open my Anchor wallet here, and I can look at all of these. Like, let's see, Max's Monkeys is on my ledger. Like, I can look at it, I can go through it, see what coins are in here, which is nothing right now. It just has NFTs, but I could go to like Max Collected, and then, you know, reload here. I can see I have 45 wax in here. I can do everything with the wallet up until signing the transaction. That is when the ledger needs to be plugged in, because again, the wallet isn't where the coins live. The coins live on the blockchain, and you can always check and interface with your wallet's public key, which is everybody can see. You can interact with that however you need until the transaction moment when the private key needs to sign. At that moment, you must have your hardware device connected and need to be physically present at it to press the buttons and confirm the transaction. And the hardware devices have an added security level where they'll have a screen that actually displays what the transaction is that you're signing. So even if your computer environment is compromised, for example, if I say I want to send these 45 wax, I want to send this to Mark's wallet. If I fill this in with Mark's wallet address and then hit confirm, when it queries my hardware device, the hardware device will display on the screen, this is the transaction you're about to sign. Do you want to? And there are very sophisticated attack vectors where what you're seeing on your screen might be Mark's wallet, but what you're actually signing is not. And in that scenario, the hardware wallet will display what you're actually signing, even if your computer does not. So it really gives you a separate offline environment to preview the transactions before you then physically sign them, and is by a large margin the safest way to store your cryptocurrency assets.
We have another
There's
question.
a good bit
real
of
quick.
coin support too.
Another question. Hold on.
Another question really quick.
Yeah.
I am the KY says, have you used multiple versions of ledgers? Do you have a preference, and do you rely on enough to keep backup hardware wallets? And I think they're meaning like with your Trezor and other, like, do you use other brands?
So sorry, I'll flip back. Really quick before I get into this one, this is if you have I know because most people have this web wallet. If you have one of these and you have any amount of anything on here, or you intend to use it ever, you should click down here on the bottom right in the settings wheel, and then under account security, you should absolutely enable two-factor authentication. So mine doesn't have the enable option because I have it enabled, but you should definitely do this with pretty much any account that you have that you want to keep secure, and then using a separate app. Like I use Authy, which is like the Google Authenticator app on my phone, to help secure this type of a wallet. So even if your email and your password to this wallet were compromised, the two-factor authentication would be your last line of defense against a hacker stealing your assets from this type of a wallet. And then, okay, so now that I've said that, back to...
Oh, just go to StreamYard so we can see the question.
So the question was about the different versions of the ledgers. So I've been using the hardware wallets for a long time. So I started with the Ledger Nano S, and I have a couple of those. Not because you need several, but because I think over the years acquired a couple. And I've also used the Ledger Nano X, and recently got a Trezor Model T, which is the touchscreen one. And I use them all kind of interchangeably, actually, because they're all just tools for me to interact with my assets. And by that, I mean, I've used the same seed phrase that I initially created on my ledger and initially started mining Bitcoins into and all that stuff years ago, and recovered that from the ledger onto the Trezor wallet to use it with that. And none of that should be like shocking or surprising, because the coins aren't on the hardware device. The coins are on the blockchain. The hardware device is just a way for me to connect to a wallet interface that lets me submit a signature to some kind of transaction that I want to do. So if I want to submit that signature from this device or like a different device, it really doesn't make a huge difference. But as far as my personal preference, I really like the Ledger model, the Ledger Nano S, because it has a ton of support. Like you can use it with the most different tokens. It supports the most universal kind of like connectivities. Like I can connect it to like MetaMask. I can connect it to Anchor. I can't do the Anchor with my Trezor, even though I have the same seed with meaning that the Wax wallet exists theoretically on this Trezor. I just can't access it because the support for it doesn't exist for that. And so for accessibility, and if you only have one of these wallets, I would say the Ledger Model S, and mostly because I don't have the X.
I think it casts the widest net.
It casts the widest net. It's the most affordable.
The same price, I guess.
What I guess I have
feel
a
like we'll
potential
just have
question.
Paul like every 30 seconds chime in like, not financial advice.
What
Not financial advice.
No, is this
have you
more
already
education
explained? What do you
so
do
can
if your
secure
ledger
assets?
breaks?
Hold
What do you do if your ledger breaks? And also, what do you do if Ledger goes out of business? Like, if I can't recover my
That's
stuff,
a good
which
question.
you'll talk about, how do I recover my stuff if Ledger just decides we're not going to make any more hardware wallets?
So, okay, that's a great question. So the way that it works when you're first setting up a hardware wallet, the hardware device itself will give you a set of words in a specific order. That set of words in that order is your seed phrase. And so what that means is basically the way that the hardware wallet derives its addresses and its wallets that you will generate inside of this, device. Because like I'm saying, you can have like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Wax, EOS, all of this stuff on your same ledger. And the way that you're generating all these separate addresses to do that is an algorithmic. I don't want to get too technical. So it's an algorithm. It's called hierarchically deterministic, meaning that you have a hierarchy of wallets and addresses that are deterministically generated from a singular point. That singular point is the seed. So you can literally make, with a seed, you can make an infinite number of wallets, but because the way that those wallets generation from that seed is derived, it is deterministic, and therefore any other software using the same algorithm can recover those same addresses in that same order if given the same seed. So knowing all of that, when you set up your ledger, Nano S, we'll stick with that since that's the one I just recommended. For the very first time, what we know, because Ledger open sourced their hardware specs as well as the software they're running, everything they do is open source. You can read the source code yourself if you don't trust any of these companies to steal your crypto. Like if you load this on the device, how do I know that the company hasn't put in a back end to steal my my assets? And the truth is you don't. You can't trust people. You need to verify, and the only way you can verify is if this source material is open source, which that's very important in this space, and that's the case with these wallets. So Trezor is also open source, meaning that anybody has access to the code, meaning that if there's a vulnerability, it's right there for you to exploit. And at this point, there's literally hundreds of millions of dollars secured in these types of devices, and if an exploit existed, it would be used. I mean, there's like weird arguments people suggest, like, oh, if you knew about it, you might wait till there's more. It's like, no, you wouldn't. If you knew about it, you would be scared that somebody else also knows about it, and you would use it.
So like the idea that seed phrase is always connected to the private key on the blockchain, since you don't need the hardware wallet.
Yes,
the hardware wallet is a tool, not the blockchain, that you could theoretically stomp on your ledger as long as you have your seed phrase memorized or stored securely, and basically assuming the internet continues to exist in some hellscape scenario here, like you can, that is the lowest common denominator of what you would need to find a way to access the blockchain, re-input that seed phrase, and recover a wallet in some way.
Yeah, so basically what you can do with your Wax wallet, let's stick to the Wax wallet on the Ledger Nano S. So you have your ledger, you had it create for you a seed phrase, you used the seed phrase to to generate, you have a wallet, you've sent a few coins to it, you messed up the punching the password intentionally so that it wiped your ledger, you restored the ledger, and you were able to re-access the few coins that you sent to it, thus confirming your ability to do so, and then you sent the rest of your funds to it.
That's a really huge pro tip when you first started.
That is absolutely, you should be doing that order of operations when you're first setting up, so that no matter what, once your assets are on there, let's say you put a few $100s into this, in a few years, maybe it's a few $1,000s, you don't want to be sitting there when it's worth much more being like, what if something goes wrong? I've never actually tested this. Test it with like 10 cents, make sure you can recover the 10 cents, and then you'll never think about that when it's more than 10 cents. But anyway, so you've done all this stuff, you've created your Ledger wallet, you've installed the EOS app on Ledger, used that to generate an EOS key pair, made yourself a Wax wallet, all of this fun stuff. You're ready to go. And then Ledger goes out of business, they stop supporting their software, and your Ledger breaks, you can't recover it. But we know that because their code was open source, they derived your private and public key pair using what's called BIP16, which is a protocol standard on hierarchically deterministic seed phrase deviation. And what that means is now you can download any wallet out there. It can be a hot wallet, it can be whatever, as long as it's a wallet that uses BIP16 standard to derive its addresses. You can punch your seed phrase into that wallet, and it will derive the exact same addresses that you had on your ledger. your Bitcoin addresses, your Ethereum addresses, your Wax wallets, all of that stuff is back, and it's all because of the seed phrase. Now that should instill in you the importance of keeping those words safe. If you're gonna take the time to generate them in an offline environment, don't like write them on a piece of paper and then leave the piece of paper in the kitchen table, like my dad did when I first introduced him to it, because those words and that piece of paper are your assets. Anybody who knows these words can recover your assets without your ledger, without your like knowledge from anywhere in the world, as long as they just install themselves, like, you know, like for example, the Exodus wallet I think is a BIP 16. So if you could, but I guess Ledger uses 24 words and they use 12, so that might be a bad example. But I think Jax is another wallet you could download that's like a hot wallet. You could do a 24-word recover a Ledger, 24-word seed phrase, and then just have it in your Jax wallet. It'll be there. Like, and so that means if you can do that, so can anybody who has those words. So act appropriately when it comes to that, because those words are your assets. And it might not seem like it because, you know, it's like on a little like couple cents note card, but eventually that can be quite valuable. And a technique that I've been using to keep my seed words safe is memorizing them. There's a mental technique you can use where you think of something that you remember. For me, it's like my walk in the morning when I was going to high school. I used to ride the bus, and I would leave through like the laundry room, then through the garage, walk up the hill, and get to the bus stop. And now when I remember in my mind, I remember that walk up the hill, and I have placed basically ideal triggers there to remind me of my seed words in order. And, you know, by putting a few hours into like that memory technique, I was able to memorize like 4 different seed phrases with different variation, like lengths and stuff. So it is possible to memorize this stuff.
What happens if you have brain damage?
Insane.
And you,
so
what happens
if
you?
Damage, I did also. There's a way. So these 24-word seed phrases, you could split a 24-word seed phrase into 3 12-word chunks, where you would require 2 of the 3 in order to form one full pair or one full set of the seeds. And then so there is a physical way you can break them up like that, where like you could store them in separate places. For example, I have my family living in Germany, and I have a few family up in Seattle, and I have copies of such papers there where they have 1 of 3. So even if, you know, again, it's not that I don't trust my family, it's just that I don't have to not trust them. I don't have to trust them now because nobody can. So it's not that I don't trust them to steal from me, as much as I don't necessarily know how seriously they take security, and I take it very seriously. So I would recommend you do the same, because it's your assets, and at the end of the day, it's you and the blockchain. There is nobody else.
So you're saying you don't have them all written down in one place. You have pieces of them written down and distributed to people you trust in different places.
Like, think about it like Horcruxes.
I was thinking the same thing. Access Horcruxes.
Yeah, it's impossible to kill me unless you. No, I mean, I take it a little bit further than a lot of people do. Like, I don't think it's necessary to memorize your seed phrases. That's definitely insane. I don't necessarily think it's necessary to not use a web cloud wallet. It really depends on your own tolerance for risk and your own tolerance for ownership and sovereignty. And these cryptographic like assets, these digital assets, offer you an avenue to like a unprecedented sovereignty that just people don't really care about. And the beauty of it is you can care to whatever extent you care, and there is an avenue for you there. Like, if you don't mind having a custodian party like the Wax core team, being the custodian of your private key, set your 2-factor authentication, you're probably going to be fine. I know many people who store literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on their cloud wallet. That would make me like not sleep well at night, so I don't do that, but they have no problem with it, and they haven't experienced any issues. So there isn't like I said, at the end of the day, it's you and the blockchain. So it's up to you. You know, when everyone's like, oh, it's, you know, it's so great, you can be your own bank. Well, it's a lot of responsibility. There's a reason everybody uses the bank.
Yeah, but at least your engagement with that trust is on your terms. So you get to determine the level of trust that you have, and that sliding scale is completely in your control.
Exactly.
And that control and that freedom is really the strength, and
So-
the implementation is was different for everyone.
Yeah, so Paul was saying earlier, one of the mantras of the crypto space is not your keys, not your Bitcoin is like the original, but like not your keys, not your crypto, not your keys, not your coin. Very true. Another one that I like, my favorite one in this whole space is don't trust, verify. Simple as that. Like that's why we're all here. I think like it's a new means of exchange where we can deal with each other without having to trust anybody. You don't have to, I can do a transaction with somebody I've never met over the internet, worth literally hundreds of thousands of dollars without trusting them, and it's possible because I can verify. And we all have that ability, and I'm really excited by that. like it's really cool. Like that level of transparency and accountability is desperately needed in the world we live in. Like I don't know if you guys are noticing, but like accountability happens with transparency, and that's what we have, and that's what you should use it. You know, like it's available.
One ring to rule them all.
Yeah, right? I don't know.
Well, no, I think the idea is you have a
callback.
lot of rings. It'd be decentralized rings.
Yeah, I want to get like I can get more specifically into some like projects too, or like some techniques and like what I'll do. But I feel like that was a lot, and you need to like.
Yeah, we can split it up into more like
Yeah.
compartmentalized kind of segments.
I don't want to just like data dump on people. And
But
then
I
it's,
guess-
like,
I guess
one
the
ear out
question-
the other, because it is really important to like not just hear it but like understand it. And it took me years to get to a point where I'm
Yeah.
at now.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
we'll read the room and see if that was too
Mhm.
high of a level or too low of a level, or
Yeah, let's do a
what
pop
people
quiz.
liked it or whatever. But I mean, I think it'd be interesting to
Yeah.
kind of parse out.
Pop quiz: How does a cryptographic transaction happen? What happens when you do a transaction? Well, your public key signals the network, and then your private key signs that signal to verify that it's legitimate. That's it. Across every blockchain, across any asset that's what's happening. It's not like magic. It's not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward. It's verifiable math code. Everybody can see it. Everybody can verify it, and that's why people trust it. That's why it has value. It's not because somebody says it's worth something or somebody else thinks whatever. It's because it's a digital asset that can't be copy and pasted in a digital world. It has tremendous value. That is tremendous value.
I mean, look at like the past year. I mean, cash was effectively not used, at least for us. Like in Seattle, like these places in Seattle still do not accept cash because of COVID.
Yeah.
So like in that way, I mean, obviously you have like electronic payments through your cards, but then you just see how the value of like paper money at its core can just based on circumstances really not lose complete value, but like my cash effectively just collects dust.
Yeah.
You know, so over something that we never really anticipated. So you know, these things can change quite a bit, especially in a digitized world that becomes ever more digital every day.
Ever more digital. And the thing that we're seeing with crypto assets is accountability can exist on a global scale. It's unprecedented. Like I recently was looking at so El Salvador recently had adopted Bitcoin as their national currency. Fucking wonderful. Like great, good on you. I hope that works out, because it's definitely a hard thing to break away from the US dollar, which is what they were using. And the World Bank released a statement saying they don't recognize Bitcoin as their national currency because it was, quote, not transparent enough. Which is like, anybody who understands anything about like macroeconomics and how like World Bank operates, it's literally like they're laughing.
It's
they're laughing in
exceptionally
your fucking
opaque.
face.
It's like the most
they're
opaque
the
thing,
least
yeah.
transparent operation in the like existence. And here you have an open source system of public ledgers, and they're like, oh, it's not transparent enough. Like, can you be like more transparent in your lives? Maybe, I don't know. Like,
yeah, I
it was
can't look at other people's
ridiculous.
transactions without a lot of red tape and a lot of lawyers to try and look at what someone else did with their wallet. But I can see what every wallet does on the blockchain.
It'd be nice if I could just look at like the Citizens United Super PAC and then trace back where those funds come from. And if I have enough time, I could people's transaction moves in a way that just it literally can't be done now. And that's why you see, I think personally, that's why you see a lot of pushback from institutions and from just in general, like the powers that be, I guess, because it is them who have the most to lose from this, because this is a way you can hold people accountable. People who live above accountability, and they live above accountability because there's no transparency. Like, you can't hold someone accountable when it's like, well, prove it. Well, here's a way we can prove it. Like, you have your transactions on an immutable ledger that can't be faked, you can't be copy pasted, can't be rewritten. Like, if I had definitive proof right now of like somebody cheating, the American people out of billions of dollars, it would take me months to go through the court system. By the time I get the appropriate subpoenas in place to get to those banks who are doing the cheating, those books have been cooked 10 times over, and the proof is gone. And
they control the access.
At some point, like, it's the system that's failed, and here we come along with a better mousetrap, like they say on Shark Tank. Now it's just a matter of time, in my opinion, before like it is adopted. And I mean, I'm really passionate and excited about all this stuff. And the crazy part is I have been for like 7 years. Like, it just keeps, and it's like, it's happening. Like, all the shit that I was like, this is pipe dream nonsense in 2014. Like, the fact that recently some politician was asked about Bitcoin and was like, had an answer, like a negative answer, but like he knew what it was. Like, that blows my mind. Like, it's, like, they might be talking badly about it, but they know what it is. And that was definitely not the case when I first got my Bitcoin mining running. And when I first threw some Bitcoins at people in like in Reddit, when there was a tip bot where you could just like be like, tip 1 beer and it would send them like $4 in Bitcoin. Like,
it's come a long way too. Even if you rewind like 3 years, like 2017, 2018, it's come quite a long ways. DeFi platforms, all the utility you can do with Wax Cloud wallets. I mean, that's a lot of progress. Liquidity pools, the stability of stablecoins, the whole ecosystem of stablecoins. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much astronomical growth.
We'll get more into all this stuff. We'll do some more instructional talks. As always, this was not financial advice. We gave you a lot of information. It's been about an hour, so I think we're going to wrap up this stream. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, like, write them down and let us know, and we'll answer them on the next one.
Yeah. If you send something in advance, I could totally prepare like a better answer for you. Then
there's one last question, but I'm
Cruise
sure
Control says, what are your thoughts on decentralized or centralized crypto? Yeah, we don't really fuck with centralized crypto.
I'm a huge proponent of decentralized crypto.
I mean, we hold our own private keys because we don't trust people holding them. We don't trust people holding all of the currencies.
Yeah, that includes centralized cryptocurrencies, not just banks.
So centralized cryptocurrencies, you might as well just use a spreadsheet. What do we need? The whole point of running a blockchain is that you need parties who don't trust each other. If you're centralized, it's parties who trust each other. What's the blockchain for here? Because centralized means it's not immutable. You have the same problem I just said with the bank cooking their book. They could just cook the crypto book because it's centralized means that it's being maintained by a central authority. Cryptocurrencies by design only function, in my opinion, as sovereign currency assets or any real store of value if they are decentralized. It's extremely important that a project is decentralized in its development, in its node displacement, and in its mining powers. So keep that in mind when you're looking at projects to potentially pursue.
Sweet.
All right, well, have a good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on